So now that you kind of have your supplies in place and you have your your purpose or your vibe ready and you've got your audience ready, now you need to kind of know what you're going to be looking out for once you start this process, okay? Because you're going to start reading and you're going to be like, Ashley, I don't know what I'm looking for. What are we doing here? Okay. So this is what we're going to be looking for as we do our first pass, our first editing or reading pass of our novels. Okay, so the first thing you want to look for, and mind you, this is a global thing. Okay, so as you're reading, your developmental edits need to focus globally on plot, making sure your structure is in place, making sure, of course, this kind of goes together if you're doing this the right way, but your character arc, making sure like every character has the right amount of beats and that sort of thing in there. And lastly, your pacing. Okay, so you want to make sure you focus on those things primarily. Okay, all right. So here's some questions that you can ask yourself. Let's start off with character. Okay, so with character, you want to know, you want to pay attention to the transformation that you see happening for your character. Okay, so is your character actually transforming or are they really remaining stagnant? Um, you don't want the latter. You want them to transform. You want them to evolve into a better, hopefully, person. Or if you're doing a negative arc, then you want them to descend into villainy, which is cool. Okay, but either way, you want to be able to see some type of transformation happening as you move along through the book. All right. Next is you want to be able to easily identify your character's need, want, and their flaws. Okay. And they do need to be flawed. They cannot be perfect. Okay. That's not allowed. But in any case, you need to know what they need because typically it is in direct conflict with what they want. What they want is not really what they need. And your characters need to be able to, or your readers rather, need to be able to find that pretty easily and to understand it gives depth to your character, all that kind of stuff. If any of those are missing, then that's something that you want to write a sticky note about and then, and put it on that particular page when you realize, holy crap, I'm totally missing these items. Okay. Then last thing that you want to look at is are they active or are they passive? Which is not exactly the same as the first one with the transformation, but active characters are characters that have agency and go out and do things, and they are the doers. Okay, the passive ones are the ones that have things happen to them and they react. They're more reactionary. You don't want them unless you have a passive character whose transformation is to become active. Now that's one thing, but you don't want your characters to remain passive. So if you come across passages where you see that your character is just really becoming a doormat and they're not supposed to be a doormat, you want to make note of that and you want to address that. Okay. So the next thing that you're going to want to look for is your structure. Okay, your plot, if you will. And again, I use the Save the Cat Story Beats, which is super helpful. And of course, I will have links to all that information on this page, or rather, this is going to be on YouTube. So on my website, on the webpage for the Guild of Story Weavers. Okay, so when I talk about this, it's going to be in relation to the story beats from the Save the Cat method. Okay, you can use whatever method you like. Just know that that's what I'm referencing. So if you use Snowflake or the hero's journey or the heroine's journey, whatever it is, know the beats that you're supposed to have. And again, have a special sticky note color just for your structural beats. Okay. Now, this will help you get like a little bit of a reverse outline. So if you're a pantser, not to fear that you don't have an outline because you will, okay, with this particular point in the editing process, okay? So what you're looking for is any beats that you find that you're like, hey, this is my inciting incident. This is, what else is there? This is my opening image, and does that harken later on, and in the final image, is do you have a turn into the second act type of thing? Do you have a catalyst? All that kind of stuff. If when you see it happen, you're going to make a sticky note for it, and I'm going to show you what the sticky note should look like, to kind of help you with making sure that you know where everything is, where you can find it again in your novel later on. Because you're going to take these sticky notes out and you're going to put them up on the wall and organize them. Okay. But most importantly, it's not the ones that you find, it's the ones that you don't find. Okay. Because as you're reading, you're going to go, oh, I know what that one is. Oh, I know what that one is. But then you're going to compare it to the story structure that you've chosen to use. And you're going to realize, oh, I'm missing that. And that's an important beat to have. Or, oh, the middle of my novel is kind of lacking. Different things like that. You're going to start noticing that after you've finished and you're starting to organize your stickies. Okay. All right. So let's talk about pacing. Okay. Pacing. Oh, it's a fun thing, right? Okay, so where is the lag? That's going to be the question that you're going to be asking as you're focusing on your novel. Okay, where is the lag at? So I want you to do something as you're reading. Okay, as you're reading, I want you to pay attention to where you are bored and where you put your novel down. And I don't mean in the sense like, oh my gosh, it's time to pick up my kids, I've got to go. That's not what I mean. I mean, like when you feel like, oh, man, I need to go do dishes. And then you go off and you go do dishes. Leave your novel open and put a sticky note when you get back. But in any case, know where you start to get bored. Because if you are bored as the writer, guess what? So will your readers. So make sure you take note of those places. Similarly, if I can say that word properly, you want to look at the opposite as well. Notice where you are so like, oh my gosh, I need a break. Oh, there's so much happening and I just can't stop, but I seriously need to sit down and calm down. Put a sticky note there, and that is where your readers will also feel exhausted and feel like, oh my gosh, this is going too fast. I need to slow down and something needs to happen. Okay. So put a sticky note there and know that that's another type of pacing issue that you need to address. Now, as you're reading this, you don't need to figure out what that issue is. That's for future you. You're just knowing that's an issue and you need to put a sticky note on it. Okay. Now, future you is going to determine, once you look at that sticky note and kind of review where that spot is, okay, is this info dumping? Is this slow because I'm bored because it's info dumping? There's a bunch of paragraphs about nonsense that I don't need to know. Am I getting bored in the middle of my story because there's nothing exciting happening when there should be? Or are the things going too fast because you have nothing but dialogue, which is something I struggle with. And I need to slow down and to kind of give some description to the scene and kind of talk about like what my character's thinking a little bit more. So that is some of the ways that you can look at fixing it later on. But again, as you're reading it, you're just noticing the issue. Once you get finished with your novel and finished with the read through, you're going to be making your editing plan, and that's when you get to figure out how to do the fixing. Okay. All right. So those are your three main areas that you are going to look at as you are going through and reading your manuscript for the first time, and hopefully at least a month. Okay. At least a month, but maybe 2 weeks if you can manage that much. Okay, so let's talk about the next thing. Let's talk about some do's and don'ts. All right, so let's talk about some do's and don'ts with developmental editing, and then also what goes into a sticky, because those are two big things. Okay, so first off, really try to only focus in on your big picture items, like and your revision type stuff, like the stuff where you need to cut chapters and all that kind of thing. So really try to focus in on those big picture items, but that's what the stickies are for. Okay. So if you find something you just can't resist putting it down, put it on a sticky. Do not write it down in your manuscript, because then you can make a decision later. about whether or not whether or not you keep that particular edit that you're going to propose to yourself. Okay. All right. Second thing is, like, once again, make sure you have a separate structural sticky note. So, make sure that you have one just for your plot and that kind of stuff. And you want to make sure if you're doing, so with Save the Cat, like we talked about before, you're supposed to do the beat sheet for every POV character. So this is true for every POV character. Make sure that you're mapping out those beats that you find on its own special sticky note color. Okay, that way they're easy for you to organize, because later on, once we start making our editing plans, it's going to make it easier on you in the long run. Okay. All right. Next, you want to make sure, one of the cool things that you could do, since you're going to print out your manuscript, and hopefully you did this already before you start, before June 1st, is you can change the font, and that's really helpful for you to be able to trick your eyes and your brain into thinking you're really looking at something new and fresh and something that you don't necessarily. It's just a little trick of mine that I do. I find it works. Okay, and lastly, reward yourself, please. Okay, and come talk to us in Discord about your triumphs, or if you're freaking out and you don't know what to do, come over there and with your fellow apprentices and guild members, and come commiserate and ask for help. Okay, because that's what we're here for. Okay, so don't be afraid of doing that. All right, the don't column, okay? As I said in the beginning, you need as much objectivity as you can, so put distance between you and your book. And whether that's metaphorical or literal is up to you, but try to give yourself no less than 2 weeks, but really ideally at least a month, okay? Next, because you're printing it up and you're doing it with a spiral bound book, this shouldn't be as much of a problem, but try not to look at grammar or any type of prosy type of issues. If you find them, do write them down, because once you start organizing, you can just chuck that list, but at least it gives you an outlet, if you will, as you're reading through and you're like, oh no, this just has to get fixed. At least you wrote it down. But then editing plan you is just going to be like, I don't need to worry about that now. I got these bigger issues at hand. Okay. So do try to kind of forget the grammarian, leave her or him alone, go lock them up somewhere. Okay. So those are your do's and don'ts. All right. So what goes into a sticky, Ashley? Okay, so you're going to see this image on the screen, but it's pretty simple. And first off, you're gonna grab your sticky, and you are going to put the issue or observation that you see in the middle, and then it's up to you if you want to put it on the bottom. I put them on the bottom, that way I found it easier to find my stuff later on that way, but you could put it on the top as well. But put the location of this particular observation or issue. Trust me, you want to do this because you're going to have to make a plan later. And I had to go back through and do this myself, which was not fun. But at least I was only like maybe a quarter of the way through my book when I realized, ooh, I need to know where this came from. So put your chapter and your page number. That way, when you go to make your editing plan, you know exactly where this issue was, and you can plan accordingly. And you can put the right note with the right location. Okay. All right. So that's what your sticky note is going to kind of look like.